No one knows exactly what happens at the heart of a black hole, but nature has left enough clues for us to understand that it is not just a voracious abyss where everything disappears. There is something deeper there, something that defies the very logic of space-time. For some, a black hole is the absolute end. For others, it is the beginning of a completely different kind of existence. And for a growing number of theoretical physicists, these impossible objects may not be just cosmic tombs, but rather passages, silent portals to hidden, reflected, mirrored, or radically different universes from our own. What will happen if we understand that each black hole does not destroy the information it swallows, but simply transfers it to another domain of reality? And what if we are surrounded not by inescapable abysses, but by closed doors waiting to be finally understood? The first suspicion that black holes were more than they seemed arose when we realized how abnormal they truly are. At the center of a galaxy, a gravitational monster millions of times more massive than the Sun bends light as if it were fabric, drags time into itself, and rearranges everything it touches. There is no surface, no ground, no physical boundary. Everything is governed by the event horizon, an imaginary line beyond which turning back becomes mathematically impossible. But the horizon is not a wall. It is a geometric limit, a change in how space and time behave. And this raises an uncomfortable question. If the horizon is merely an extreme curvature of space-time, why do we think of it as an end? Why not think of it as a transition? The big question has always been what happens to the information. The laws of physics say that nothing can destroy fundamental information in the universe. You can transform it, burn it, collapse it, break it into smaller pieces, but absolutely destroy it, no. Nothing in nature simply erases data. But a black hole seems to do exactly that. If a star, a planet, or even an entire living being falls in, all the details of its composition, shape, structure, temperature, history, everything disappears forever. This shouldn't be possible. And that's what led some of the biggest names in physics to suspect that we are interpreting black holes incorrectly. If information cannot be destroyed, it has to go somewhere. Perhaps it remains encoded on the surface of the horizon, as holographic physics has suggested. Perhaps it remains suspended in some deep quantum structure. But what if the answer is even more radical? What if the information simply continues? Not here, but somewhere else? What if what we perceive as total destruction is, in fact, a silent transfer to another universe? One that may have been born precisely from the gravitational collapse of a parent black hole. This idea is disconcerting, and at the same time, elegantly logical. The general equation of relativity does not prohibit the connection between different regions of space-time. On the contrary, the most exotic mathematical solutions suggest that tunnels may exist, Einstein-Rosen bridges, gravitational shortcuts capable of connecting distant regions of the cosmos, or completely separate realities. The problem is that these bridges have always been considered unstable, destroyed even before being crossed. But that's only in our universe, with our matter and our energy. What if physics operates with a different geometry on the other side? What if what falls into a black hole simply resurfaces in another dimension, where local laws stabilize the passage? The first indication that this wasn't just fiction came from the strange behavior of Hawking radiation. Black holes aren't completely black. They emit something little by little until they evaporate. But where does this radiation come from? And what does it say about what's happening inside? Hawking believed that the radiation carried very little information, almost none. But more recent research suggests something different. The radiation may contain subtle patterns, like compressed codes, the distant echo of what was swallowed. This means that the black hole doesn't destroy anything. It transforms and transports. And if it transports, where does it take it? The most daring mathematical models suggest that when a black hole reaches certain limits, its singularity, the region where all known laws collapse, may simply not exist. Instead, matter is compressed to a critical point and then reverses, like a supercharged spring that refuses to break. This process could propel matter outward, not back into our universe, but into a new space-time continuum, creating a kind of local Big Bang. Each black hole would then be the cradle of a new universe. We may be direct descendants of a black hole from another universe, and this raises the possibility that within the black holes here in our cosmos, other universes are forming, each with its own physical constants, its own galaxies, and perhaps its own versions of life. Photos of black holes don't show the singularity, but they reveal the outline of the invisible, the shadow, the halo of distorted light. This outline may be more than just extreme gravity. Perhaps it's showing what we see from the outside perspective of a closed door, a door whose internal structure we completely don't know. If we could cross that boundary, we would see something radically different. Perhaps an expanding space, perhaps an inverted horizon, perhaps a new energy field where the rules that govern us don't exist. Some believe that gravity in our universe is so weak compared to other fundamental forces, precisely because part of it is leaking into other dimensions through these portals. What if what we call a singularity is not a point of destruction, but a point of creation? What if black holes are the fundamental machines of the cosmos, recycling matter, energy, and information to generate new universes in an eternal cycle? This would make the universe a kind of cosmic tree, where each branch is a new cosmos born from the compressed seed of an extreme gravitational collapse. Physicists like Smolin have already suggested something similar, a cosmological natural selection, where universes with more black holes generate more descendants. It's as if the multiverse were evolving, adapting, reproducing. But the most unsettling part is that if black holes are doors, then doors aren't one-sided. If something can come out the other side, something can also come in. We don't have direct evidence of this, but we can't rule out that possibility. Perhaps there are particles that pass through black holes and emerge in our universe as exotic components. Dark matter, for example. Nobody knows what dark matter is. It doesn't interact with light. It doesn't emit. It doesn't absorb. It doesn't reflect. It's as if it partially belongs to another domain. What if these particles are remnants of matter that passed through a black hole elsewhere and simply fell here? What if our universe is constantly being fed by streams of information coming from other realities through these gravitational portals? The very structure of space-time seems to have wrinkles, vibrations, echoes. Recently detected gravitational waves show that black holes collide, merge, and distort the cosmic fabric like droplets on a liquid surface. Each collision can emit pulses that may influence not only this universe, but also any connected universe. If black holes are bridges, this connection may be profound, like communicating vessels between dimensions. What if advanced civilizations already knew this before us? Perhaps they studied black holes as maps, gateways, interstellar or interstate cosmological routes. Perhaps part of what we imagine as dark energy, that mysterious force that accelerates the expansion of the universe, is simply the result of constant transfers between universes through these portals. Nothing guarantees that the flow is symmetrical. Perhaps some of the energy of our universe is being constantly drained into descendant universes. Perhaps we are witnessing the gradual loss of mother energy, without realizing that we are just a node in a gigantic cosmic network of births and deaths of universes. Imagine the vision. You look into a black hole and don't see destruction, but rather an energetic gateway, a cosmic womb, an interdimensional transporter. Everything that falls in there doesn't die. It just changes address. Perhaps consciousness, matter, and time are recycled, reorganized, reborn. And if that's true, it means we're never really ending stories. We're extending them beyond our reach. But the truly haunting question is simple. If black holes are bridges to other universes, who or what is on the other side? If black holes are bridges to other universes, then each one may contain a complete history, perhaps even a timeline entirely independent of our own. This means that where we see an abyss, a being from another universe may see the sky itself. Where we see collapse, another reality may see expansion. For us, time drags towards a singular end. For them, it may be the exact instant of a local Big Bang. This exchange of perspectives is not just philosophical, it's physical. Mathematics shows that the fall towards a black hole and the initial explosion of a newly formed universe may be two sides of the same coin. What we call the end may simply be an entrance to an invisible cosmological route. The idea of a universe within another is not new, but the way we have begun to mathematically model this possibility has changed. Previously, we imagined parallel universes as separate dimensions, like drawers that never touch. But black holes violate this imaginary separation. They connect different levels of space-time, creating gravitational shortcuts that ignore any traditional notion of distance. What is inside a black hole is not far away. It is beyond, something qualitatively different. And if the surface of this portal encodes the fundamental rules of the next universe, like a membrane between two distinct types of reality, it makes sense that the physical constants vary, creating new scenarios for evolution. The basic structure of a black hole, mass compressed to its limit, extreme density, dilated time, closely resembles the initial conditions of our own universe. It's as if the cosmos was born inside something similar to an ancestral black hole. And if that's true, then our Big Bang wasn't the absolute beginning, but only a restart, the continuation of an endless cycle. We are not the first universe to emerge from this process, and we certainly won't be the last. Nature rarely creates such powerful mechanisms without them serving some ongoing purpose. Recycling is one of the deepest rules of the cosmos. Life itself follows this pattern: birth, evolution, collapse, rebirth. It's possible that the very fabric of reality follows something similar. If we imagine each black hole as a seed, then the cosmos becomes a forest, where each tree is a universe and its fruits are potential new universes. This scenario changes everything about how we understand cosmic evolution. A reality with slightly different laws might favor the formation of black holes, and therefore generate more descendant universes. This is essentially a cosmological evolutionary process. Universes that produce many black holes generate more descendants, and universes that produce few end up as barren branches in this gigantic multidimensional tree. Our universe has billions of black holes. Perhaps that's precisely why we exist. We are part of the lineage of a highly fertile universe, but it's not enough to imagine black holes as portals. We need to consider the physical consequences of this for what we observe here. If these portals connect realities, this connection leaves marks, and perhaps we are already observing some of them without realizing it. The cosmic microwave background radiation, for example, contains small random fluctuations, patterns that we still cannot fully explain. The map of the early universe has hotter and colder regions, micro-deviations that seem to have no clear origin. But what if some of these irregularities are echoes of another universe? What if small disturbances at the moment of transfer through the ancestral black hole left subtle impressions on our young reality? They would be like scars from cosmic birth. Another mystery that's hard to ignore is dark matter. It makes up more than 80% of all the mass in the universe, but we don't know what it is. It doesn't interact with light. It doesn't experience the same forces we know, but it exerts gravity, as if it were a shadow of something larger, something that doesn't entirely belong to our dimensional space. It's possible that it's matter originating from other universes, matter that leaked or crossed gravitational portals and got trapped here, influencing everything without ever revealing its true nature. Some theories suggest that dark matter may simply be normal matter existing in adjacent dimensions, interacting with us only through gravity. But what if these adjacent systems are, in fact, daughter, sibling, or ancestor universes, connected to us by the internal structure of black holes? Dark energy, equally mysterious, which causes the universe to expand ever faster, may also be a symptom of the universal cycle. Perhaps the vacuum energy constant in our cosmos is merely the residual effect of energy transfer between connected universes, as if we were receiving a delayed echo from the collapse of a previous universe, or contributing energy to a universe in formation. The acceleration of expansion may not be an isolated phenomenon, but a manifestation of a much larger system, where universes exchange energy through deep gravitational portals. Nothing guarantees that the flow is unidirectional. It is possible that we lose energy to descendant universes, while receiving energy from ancestral universes. This would create a constant cycle of energy migration, a kind of cosmic breathing between dimensions. Another enigmatic clue is the relativistic jets emitted by active black holes. They shouldn't exist. Matter spiraling into a black hole should simply disappear beyond the event horizon. But some of this matter is expelled in gigantic jets, traveling at almost the speed of light, traversing entire galaxies. How is this possible if nothing escapes the event horizon? The traditional answer involves magnetic fields and turbulence in the accretion disk. But there is another, more radical possibility. These jets may be external resonances of internal flows. Not what comes out of the black hole, but what crosses the interior to another universe and leaves a visible energetic echo on this side. as if we were seeing the trail of an active door, the tremor of a functioning portal. If black holes are doorways, then the singularity ceases to be a final wall and becomes a conversion mechanism. Matter that falls in is transformed, reorganized, perhaps even decompressed into more basic forms before being injected into another space-time. It's like traversing a dimensional funnel where information is recycled. This would explain why the laws of physics seem so finely tuned in our universe. Perhaps it's not a coincidence. Perhaps cosmic robots or automatic reality systems adjust parameters during the transition to ensure stability. Unstable universes simply die quickly and do not generate descendants. Universes whose equilibrium allows the formation of black holes create new universes in cascade, reinforcing parameters that allow continuity. But there's something even more unsettling. What happens to conscious information? If an advanced civilization understood the true structure of black holes, it could use them as portals, not to send physical bodies, but to send information, consciousness, programs, quantum patterns. The mind could cross the portal, not the body. Ancient civilizations might have sent signals to descendant universes. Perhaps there are coded messages in the background radiation, in the distribution of galaxies, in the initial quantum patterns, not necessarily languages, but mathematical signatures, geometric invariants, specific physical constants, as if the very DNA of the universe had received instructions from another cosmos. This would transform everything we understand about origin, destiny, and purpose. If this is possible, we ourselves may be being observed, not directly, but through physical effects they left behind. Perhaps the values of the fundamental constants are the way parent universes direct the evolution of their daughter universes. Perhaps it's a kind of cosmic architecture. What if black holes are also interdimensional communication chambers? What if within them, there are regions where information is reorganized in a way that allows it to be interpreted by connected realities? Perhaps we don't understand the language, but it may be there. Perhaps the gravitational flow carries messages that traverse space-time like silent waves. Nothing prevents civilizations much older than ours from having already explored these bridges. Perhaps they created structures around black holes to modulate them, stabilize them, transform them into navigable tunnels. Perhaps some of the Dyson spheres we've never found don't orbit stars, but rather black holes. Whoever controlled a portal between universes would have an incomprehensible advantage. They could choose where to send information, choose which universe to access, perhaps even influence the evolution of the universes they create. And this leads us to an inevitable thought. If we are descendants of another universe, part of what we are came through an ancestral black hole. Perhaps not only matter, but the fundamental physical code is linked to an ancient bridge. The singularity that gave rise to our cosmos may have been a fully functional portal in some other universe. Perhaps at the exact moment, something collapsed there, something exploded here. It's a kind of universal heartbeat. Each collapse is a birth. Each death is a transition. Each black hole is a womb. The question that arises now is not only what exists beyond the boundary of a black hole, but rather how many boundaries exist, how many universes are connected in an invisible network. And what if this network functions like a gigantic organism, where each universe is a cell, each black hole is a channel, and the entire multiverse is a living system? If black holes are indeed channels connecting universes, then the cosmic network that emerges from this idea is far more complex than we imagine. We are not talking about isolated passages, but about something that can extend like an invisible web, interconnecting multiple realities in a gigantic structure. A living, mutant, expansive network. Perhaps the multiverse is not composed of independent universes, but rather of interconnected universes. Like synapses in a transcendent brain, each black hole functioning as a connection point between domains that should not, at first glance, communicate with each other. When we observe distant galaxies and see bright points in the center, perhaps we are looking directly at these synapses. The entire space may be supporting a system that operates at levels far deeper than our current physics can reach. What if this network is more organized than we suppose? It's difficult to imagine the cosmos as something intentional, because we're used to thinking of physics as pure mechanics. But what we call mechanics may only be the surface of deeper rules. Just as ants walk without understanding the workings of the forest they inhabit, we walk in a universe whose total workings are still invisible. Perhaps the network of black holes is the structure that allows the evolution of the multiverse, the flow of information, the connection between realities, and even the transmission of organizational patterns. It's not about consciousness in the human sense, but about a complex structure that operates with its own logic. This idea becomes even more intriguing when we realize that black holes are not rare. They are everywhere. They are formed from collapsing stars, exist at the center of galaxies, appear in pairs, and even in clusters. In our own galaxy, there are millions of them. If each one is a doorway, then we live surrounded by passages we don't understand. And this suggests that our reality is constantly exchanging energy, information, and perhaps even matter with other realities. Not in an obvious way, but through deep, slow, silent processes. Quantum physics has already shown that the universe is not a closed system. Nothing prevents it from also not being closed in cosmological terms. The extreme behavior near the event horizon is the first clue that something fundamental is happening there. To an external observer, something falling into the black hole seems to decelerate infinitely. It never passes the horizon. It gets stuck in a kind of frozen time. But for the object falling in, the process is completely different. It crosses the boundary rapidly and heads towards the center. This paradox of perspectives indicates something essential. There is no absolute truth about what happens there. The experience depends on the point of view. This is strange enough when we only talk about general relativity. Now imagine this paradox amplified by a different dimensional geometry inside the black hole. The crossing might be unstable here, but perfectly stable on the other side. What we see as the end might only be the outer side of the entrance membrane. When we think of bridges between universes, we usually imagine space tunnels, bent tubes, like portals from science fiction. But reality can be much more abstract. A bridge doesn't have to be a physical channel. It can be a transformation of state, a mathematical collapse, a leap between geometries. Just as quantum waves collapse into particles when observed, the properties of a universe can collapse into a new set of laws when they cross the critical zone of a black hole. It's a cosmic phase transition. Just as water turns into vapor, matter can turn into space-time. Information can turn into energy, and energy can turn into different geometries. The critical point is that nothing we know prevents this from happening. The equations of relativity allow for solutions with bridges between distinct regions. Quantum physics demands that information not be destroyed. Cosmic thermodynamics suggests that black holes are highly organized systems with precise entropy. All of this combined points to a single logical path. The interior of a black hole is not a bottomless abyss, but an organized structure, a mechanism, a process, a machine of realities, and machines can function with purpose. Not in the human sense of intention, but in the natural sense of functional repetition. The purpose of a star is to shine. The purpose of a planet is to orbit. The purpose of a black hole can be to transform realities. And if this transformation is an essential part of the existence of the multiverse, then the network of black holes is the fundamental tool of continuous creation. Each black hole would be a root and a seed at the same time. It absorbs matter here and generates space-time elsewhere. It's as if the universal fabric was stitched together by these exotic structures. If this is true, it makes sense that black holes have almost mathematically perfect properties. The way they behave, the precision with which they obey equations, the way they always maintain consistency between mass, rotation, and charge. All this suggests a fundamental simplicity behind enormous complexity. They are objects of absolute definition. They have no wrinkles, no irregularities, no superficial details. They are pure, almost platonic entities, and such structures often appear when we are faced with universal mechanisms, basic patterns that underpin the functioning of everything. But there is another, even deeper layer. Some physicists believe that space-time may be composed of minute units, like pixels of reality. If this is true, black holes would represent regions where these pixels are rearranged in an extreme way. They would be the only places where the granularity of space reveals itself in all its force. This means that black holes may operate at a fundamental level, tampering with the code of the universe. And if they tamper with the code, they may be the means by which the code replicates itself between universes. Each universe may carry a signature inherited from its parent universe, just as organisms carry DNA. Perhaps the structure of our spacetime is a direct result of the internal conditions of the black hole that generated us. This perspective opens a disturbing door. A cosmic genealogy may exist, a family tree of universes, entire lineages of realities, each with inherited specificities. Some lineages may be short, with unstable universes that collapsed rapidly. Others may be long, with fertile universes capable of generating cascading descendants. Our universe may be one of these, or it may be just one step in a much larger lineage. Nothing prevents the existence of grandparent, great-grandparent, ancestral universes so distant that their characteristics faintly echo in our cosmos. Perhaps the physical constants of our universe are not arbitrary, but inheritances. The value of the electron's charge, the intensity of the strong nuclear force, the speed of light, all of this may have been transmitted through ancestral gravitational portals. What if this transmission mechanism allows for mutations? Just as in biological evolution, small random variations can arise. A slightly different black hole could generate a universe with somewhat different laws. Some of these universes would be hostile to life, others would be unstable, but a few would have balanced enough combinations to allow the formation of stars, galaxies, and biology. And in these universes, civilizations could arise and eventually understand this cycle. Perhaps there are universes where civilizations have achieved the ability to manipulate black holes, create universes on demand, select specific properties, and shape realities like cosmic sculptors. These civilizations wouldn't need to survive physically. They could exist as information patterns, traveling between universes through artificially stabilized black holes. All of this sounds distant, but it's not as far from reality as we think. There are already theoretical proposals for creating micro-black holes in the laboratory using high-energy particles. We haven't gotten there yet, but we're getting closer. If one day we manage to manipulate black holes, even microscopically, we will be touching the fundamental structure of reality. We will be opening the door to the engineering of universes. The mere possibility of this shows how profound the connection is between these objects and the nature of the cosmos. And one question becomes inevitable. If we can one day create universes, how do we know if we aren't already inside one? How do we know if our universe wasn't designed, adjusted, calibrated by an ancient civilization? Not in a mystical sense, but a physical one. Perhaps they manipulated the black hole that generated us, configuring the initial conditions to favor certain forms of evolution. Perhaps consciousness, life, complexity are direct results of choices made even before our universe existed. It's not necessary to imagine gods, extremely advanced physicists operating at a level that is still unimaginable to us are enough. But even without intention, the process itself is grand enough. One universe generating another universe, passing on its characteristics, connecting through deep gravitational portals. It's a vision that completely redefines who we are. We are not isolated beings in an indifferent cosmos. We are fragments of a much larger story, echoes of a universal process of continuous creation. We are part of a lineage of realities that extends far beyond our imagination. And this leads us to a disturbing thought. If black holes are bridges to other universes, then the way out also exists. We don't know how to access it. We don't know if it's possible to consciously cross over, but the door is there, silent, ancient, deep. Perhaps it always has been. If black holes are true bridges between universes, then each one not only connects two domains, but acts as a mechanism for transfer, filtering, and transformation. This means that what passes through a black hole is not simply transported, it is processed. And this suggests that the interior of these objects is not chaotic as we imagine, but organized in some way that we do not yet understand. The idea of absolute chaos is comfortable because it frees us from the responsibility of explaining the inexplicable. But each new observational piece of evidence contradicts this simplified image. The symmetrical jets, the stability of the inner orbits, the mathematical precision of the extreme rotations. Everything points to order, not disorder. And if there is order, there is structure. And if there is structure, there is function. Imagine the interior of a black hole not as a narrow tunnel, but as a distorted sphere where space-time rearranges itself into patterns we never see outside. Mathematics suggests that these regions may have a different temporal dimension, perhaps multiple time streams coexisting, perhaps a bidirectional time where past and future blend. Quantum physics indicates that the collapse of information can generate entangled states that cross dimensional barriers without unraveling. The union of these ideas opens an extraordinary possibility. Black holes may be centers of emission of alternative realities, like resonance chambers, where the very fabric of the universe is rewritten before being released into another realm. What if these internal patterns are stable enough to sustain variations in space-time that don't exist outside? We could have internal regions where the speed of light is different, where particles obey other rules, where the concept of distance completely loses its meaning. A daughter universe could emerge precisely from the internal structure of this environment. The initial collapse of a black hole can produce a gravitational rebound in another space-time, creating a sudden expansion similar to our Big Bang. If this is true, then each universe is born with a kind of fingerprint of the black hole that generated it. This fingerprint may explain why our universe is so uniformly expanded, why its physical constants seem so precisely tuned, and why there are recurring resonances in the cosmic background. Perhaps all of this is simply the mark of the collapse that occurred before our birth, a memory etched into the primordial fabric of space-time. Every galaxy, every star, every atom may be a direct result of the information pattern that traversed the ancestral portal. And if black holes are transmission mechanisms, it means that the multiverse is not just a chaotic collection of randomly scattered universes, but rather a continuous lineage where each generation carries parts of the previous one. This raises the inevitable question: what was transmitted to us? What fragments of information, energy, and structure came from another realm? And can we somehow detect these ancestral echoes? Perhaps we have already seen signs of this in the unexplained patterns of the cosmic microwave background radiation. The striking uniformity of the young universe seems to defy traditional models. It's as if something smoothed out irregularities before the start of the accelerated expansion. Some physicists suggest the existence of a highly organized pre-Big Bang. But what if this organization didn't originate here? What if it's a direct reflection of an ordered collapse elsewhere? The birth of a universe as a consequence of the death of another not only recycles energy, but also transmits order. Another clue comes from the mysterious behavior of gravity. It is absurdly weak compared to the other fundamental forces. This is so strange that some alternative models suggest that gravity may be spreading into other dimensions. But what if this weakness is precisely the residual effect of gravitational leakage into connected universes? Just as sound diminishes when it passes through walls, gravity may be dispersing through the portals formed by black holes. If this is true, then gravity is the only force that truly communicates between universes. This would make it the physical foundation of the dimensional network, and it would explain why only gravity behaves as if it were universal in the most literal sense. What if this gravitational communication allows universes to influence each other indirectly, not consciously, but structurally? The collapse of a very massive universe could affect the stability of connected universes, causing small fluctuations in their gravitational fields. These fluctuations could manifest as mysterious events we observe, such as unexpected changes in cosmic expansion or anomalies in gravitational waves. Perhaps these subtle tremors are echoes of events that don't belong to our cosmos, but that leak through dimensional bridges. Another enigmatic element is the possibility that black holes store information holographically. This means that all matter falling into them can be recorded on the surface of the event horizon, not inside. This idea not only resolves the information paradox, but also reflects a profound principle. The boundary of the black hole is more important than its depth. The boundary is the membrane where the laws of physics are rewritten. If the boundary synchronizes information between different domains, it can also act as an interface. Perhaps the interior is not the place of passage, but rather the surface. The horizon may be the portal, not the core, an energetic threshold that reorganizes information like a giant quantum door. If the horizon is the portal, then crossing it is not merely a matter of falling, but of state transformation. The physical body would never cross intact, but information would. This has profound implications for the question of consciousness. If consciousness is ultimately a highly integrated information pattern, not necessarily dependent on a specific material support, then it is not impossible to imagine that it could cross an event horizon in the same way as other forms of information. This does not imply individual survival in the traditional sense, but indicates that highly complex mental patterns could, in principle, be transferred. Advanced civilizations could explore this possibility, sending information structures through black holes as a form of communication or cosmic continuity. But what if these patterns already exist here? What if part of the universe's complexity is a direct consequence of the transmission of highly organized information through the ancestral black hole? Perhaps the universe's propensity to generate structures, from galaxies to organic molecules, is a result of inherited patterns. Nothing guarantees that biochemistry is entirely original. Life may be a local manifestation of a deeper universal structure, not specifically biological life, but a tendency towards self-organization. Perhaps universes descended from complex black holes tend to generate realities where emergent structures are common. And if we are seeing life in our universe, perhaps it is because we descend from a long lineage of universes where complexity has always found ways to express itself. This would imply that black holes are not just bridges, but vectors of complexity. And where there is complexity, there can be evolution. This perspective completely changes the role of life in the cosmos. Life would not be a rare chemical accident, but a natural consequence of the transmission of patterns across universes. This gives life a cosmic depth we never imagined. We are not only a product of biological evolution, but perhaps a product of cosmological evolution. Life would be a late manifestation of patterns transmitted through ancestral gravitational portals. We are sophisticated echoes of structures formed before our universe was born. If this is true, a disturbing question arises. Is there communication between universes through black holes? Not in the sense of clear messages, but in the sense of the transfer of patterns that influence fundamental properties. One universe can learn from another through the transmission of structures encoded in gravitational collapse. This may be the deepest form of cosmic communication, a silent conversation between distant realities, spread across billions of years and infinite domains. A slow but constant exchange of universal patterns, a shared evolution, and perhaps there are cosmic architects who have learned to manipulate this transmission. Civilizations that have understood that controlling black holes means controlling the flow of information between universes. Perhaps some of the mysterious structures we observe, incomplete spheres, gravitational disturbances with no apparent origin, anomalous energy zones, are the work of civilizations attempting to influence future universes, not to dominate, but to preserve, to guide, to leave instructions engraved in the cosmological code. The echo of these instructions may be present in the fundamental constants we measure every day, but the most unsettling question remains: can we deliberately access these bridges? Could we one day build technology capable of stabilizing a black hole, modulating it, using it as a real passage? We don't yet have the answers, but the fact that black holes are stable enough to survive billions of years already suggests that, in principle, it is possible to manipulate them. The universe doesn't protect its portals. They are scattered everywhere. Perhaps we simply lack the understanding to access them. What if, the moment we finally understand what lies beyond the horizon, we discover that the path was always open? If black holes are doorways, then each of these structures is a point of tension between what we understand and what we haven't even been able to conceive yet. They are the limit of human knowledge, the place where our theories collide and crumble like sand. General relativity says that space-time curves infinitely inside them. Quantum mechanics says that this cannot happen. And this conflict is not accidental. Perhaps it is precisely there, at this point of friction between theories, that the deepest truth is hidden. It's as if the universe has left the most important answer exactly where we cannot reach it. Not because it wants to frustrate us, but because our current understanding is still too small to cross that frontier. The point is that nature never creates paradoxes for no reason. When something seems impossible, it usually means we're looking at it from the wrong perspective. What if the singularity paradox exists only because we're trying to describe it using insufficient language? It's like trying to translate music into numbers using only integers. You might get close, but there's always some nuance missing. Perhaps the interior of a black hole is governed by another layer of reality, one where space, time, energy, and information are just facets of something more fundamental, a layer that connects universes like a network of fibers, supporting a larger fabric. If this is true, then the singularity is not a point of destruction, but a point of reorganization. All the information that falls there needs to be rewritten, transformed, compressed, and then expanded elsewhere. It's a continuous process, like cosmic breathing. The universe inhales when stars collapse and black holes swallow matter. It exhales when new universes are born on the other side. This view completely transforms the cosmic cycle. There is no absolute beginning nor absolute end. There is only transition, metamorphosis, flow. We, as living beings, are part of this flow. Tiny temporary fragments within a movement that surpasses any comprehensible scale. What if the expansion of our universe itself is a consequence of this process of interconnected universes breathing together? Dark energy, responsible for accelerating the expansion, is so mysterious that it seems to appear out of nowhere. But nothing truly appears out of nowhere. Perhaps it comes from outside. Perhaps it is the local manifestation of an energy flow that traverses our universe, going back and forth through gravitational portals that we don't perceive. If each black hole connects our universe to another, then each one could function as a pressure valve, regulating the energy exchange between realities. An energy loss in one universe could manifest as a gain in another. This would explain not only dark energy, but also the strange uniformity of the expansion, as if something were pulling everything in a coordinated way. Another intriguing clue comes from gravitational waves. When two black holes collide, they send out gigantic pulses that traverse space-time. These pulses are so intense that they warp the very fabric of reality. That's impressive in itself, but think further. If these pulses traverse our universe, why wouldn't they traverse others as well? If black holes are bridges, a collision could send signals to multiple realms simultaneously. Each connected universe could receive an echo of this fusion, not as light or matter, but as a fundamental vibration of the universal fabric. Perhaps there are universes that detect these waves as anomalies, just as we detect them here. It would be an involuntary, but real, interdimensional communication. And this leads us to another mystery. What happens to time inside a black hole? We know that time inside doesn't work the same way as outside. It slows down, distorts, and contorts itself around the extreme gravity. Some mathematical models suggest that time may even reverse, or simply cease to exist as an independent variable. If time truly collapses into a different dimension inside a black hole, this means that what falls in there doesn't follow any linearity. It's reorganized outside the common temporal flow. This makes it possible for daughter universes to have times completely independent of their parents. A universe can live for billions of years while its ancestral universe barely exists for a few seconds, and vice versa. The notion of cosmic ancestry completely loses its traditional meaning. The history of the multiverse is not linear, it's fractal. If time is flexible in this way, then concepts like cause and effect become more complex than we imagine. Perhaps a daughter universe could influence its parent universe through reverse gravitational flow, or even through inherited patterns in a non-temporal way. This means that origin and destiny are intertwined in ways we cannot comprehend with linear logic. The very idea of progress may be merely a local perception. While the multiverse operates in simultaneous, coexisting, interdependent patterns, there is also the possibility that black holes act as filters. They not only transfer information, but select it. Perhaps only certain forms of information can pass through. Perhaps there is a natural criterion imposed by the fundamental laws themselves that determines what is transmitted and what is discarded. This would transform the process of transition between universes into a kind of natural selection of information. Patterns that survive gravitational collapse would be the most stable, most coherent, most universal. Fragile patterns would disappear. This would explain why certain structures, such as prime numbers, mathematical symmetries, and fundamental constants, are so deeply ingrained at any level of reality. They may simply be the most resilient patterns in the multiverse. This selection process may be constantly shaping the multiverse, filtering out useful complexity, transmitting organizational principles, and discarding unnecessary chaos. Life may be one of these resilient patterns, capable of surviving multiple cosmological transitions, not as organisms, but as structure. The tendency towards self-organization could be a pattern inherited from previous universes. Perhaps life arises almost inevitably in any universe with minimal conditions for it. And if this is true, life is not local, it is universal, not in the sense of existing on only many planets, but in the sense of being part of the very deep architecture of the multiverse. Consciousness, then, may be the most sophisticated manifestation of this pattern. Not human consciousness, but the universe's capacity to generate self-perceiving systems. If this pattern is robust enough to traverse gravitational portals, perhaps there exists a very ancient form of consciousness spread across universes, not an entity, but a tendency, an impulse, an echo. Perhaps this is why the universe seems so sharply attuned to generating complexity, because this complexity was already there before our universe even existed, transmitted through the portal that gave rise to us. Another profound implication arises when we consider the question of the other side. If every black hole connects our universe to another, then what is the structure of the entire network? How many universes are connected to ours? Is it a tree network, a circular network, an infinite network, or something even stranger, like a multidimensional web, where each universe is connected not only to its direct ancestor, but to multiple others through lateral branches? Perhaps this network is so expansive that the entire multiverse is a living system, with layers of realities constantly exchanging energy and information, like cells exchanging signals within a giant organism. If this is true, then our universe is just one cell among trillions. This perspective also explains a question few dare to ask. Why do we exist in this particular universe and not another? The answer may be simple, because this universe is part of a fertile lineage where black holes have produced successive descendants, creating an environment conducive to the emergence of complex structures. We are products of cosmological success, descendants of a lineage that survived multiple dimensional transitions. Every atom in our body may be the result of patterns that survived the collapse of entire universes, but every lineage has a future. And if black holes are portals, then the future of our lineage depends on what happens inside them now. Every active black hole in our universe may be generating descendants, sending seeds to new cosmos. This means that somehow part of us, of our matter, of our energy, may be crossing over right now into universes that are just beginning to exist. Perhaps every collapsing star is contributing to the birth of daughter universes. Perhaps we are ancestors of entire realities without even realizing it. And then the inevitable question arises. If black holes are bridges, then what is the final destination of everything? There is no final destination. There is only a cycle. Each universe is just a stage. The multiverse is the organism, and we are small notes within a piece of music that traverses infinite worlds. If black holes are portals to other universes, then the multiverse may not be just a collection of disconnected realities, but a deeply interdependent system where each universe influences others in subtle and invisible ways. This means we are not isolated, even if we never directly perceive the connections. Transitions between universes may occur on scales and dimensions that completely escape our perception, yet they may still be shaping everything around us, from the structure of galaxies to the very evolution of consciousness. What if we are living within a larger system where universes feed off each other, exchange energy, share patterns, and perhaps help each other evolve? This thought becomes even more powerful when we consider something we normally ignore. Black holes have cycles. They are not static. They form, grow, distort, swallow, and then slowly evaporate through Hawking radiation. What if evaporation isn't just the end? What if it's another kind of transition? Hawking radiation carries information, even if compressed into almost undecipherable patterns. This suggests that evaporation is a form of return, of recirculation. The matter that fell into the black hole may not return to our universe exactly as it entered, but may return in some reorganized form as pure information. This would make each black hole not only an exit door to other universes, but also an entrance door, a point of data exchange between multiple domains. If this is true, then the radiation emitted by black holes may contain fragments of the past of other universes. Not complete histories, not images or memories, but fundamental patterns, mathematical structures, basic symmetries, geometric invariants, physical tendencies. Imagine that each black hole, upon evaporating, releases particles that carry the essence of realities that existed before ours. Perhaps the entire universe is permeated by these fragments, like dust from ancient universes floating silently in space. It is possible that much of what we see today, physical constants, fundamental symmetries, has reached us through these ancestral emissions. But if black holes send information to other universes, that means each universe can leave its mark on an infinite chain of descendants. Just as antibodies circulate in the body, leaving memories of what they have already faced, perhaps the multiverse carries memories in the form of physical patterns transmitted through gravitational portals. These patterns could influence the evolution of entire universes. Perhaps the reason the universe favors the formation of complex structures is the accumulation of inherited patterns. What if complexity is not a local accident, but a transmitted trait? What if it is a kind of universal evolutionary tendency, reinforced by the natural selection of universes fertile in generating descendants? The implications are enormous. It would mean that we are constantly coming into contact with echoes of ancient universes. Perhaps the fact that we find elegant mathematical structures at the heart of physics is no coincidence. Perhaps these structures survive the transition between universes precisely because they are robust, symmetrical, and efficient. Mathematics is not just a human tool, but part of the fundamental code transmitted between realities. Prime numbers, SU3, SU2, U1, symmetries, Planck's and Boltzmann's constants, the speed of light, all of this can be seen as hereditary traits, not just properties, but inheritances. What if there are universes that actively try to influence their descendants, not through direct messages, but by creating conditions that favor life, consciousness, and complexity? Perhaps there are universes that have adjusted their internal properties to ensure that their daughter universes have a greater chance of generating intelligence, not out of altruism, but for cosmological self-preservation. A universe that generates life is a universe that generates eyes capable of observing. And observing is an act that stabilizes quantum patterns. Complex civilizations can, without realizing it, reinforce the structure of the universe itself by interacting with it. Perhaps there are universes that have learned this and modified their black holes to amplify specific patterns. What if life is part of an interdimensional cycle? Not in the common spiritual sense, but literally. Conditions that favor life and consciousness can be transmitted between universes as a physical tendency. This would explain why life arose so quickly on Earth after the planet stabilized. It's as if the conditions were already predisposed for it. Perhaps biochemistry isn't a rarity, perhaps it's inheritance. Black holes, then, could be indirectly seeding life, transmitting fundamental patterns that increase the likelihood of self-organized structures emerging in future universes. This would make biological evolution part of a much larger phenomenon, a cosmological evolution. Universes not only expand, but they learn and transmit, not consciously, but through natural processes deeply rooted in fundamental physics. What if advanced civilizations understand how to influence this transmission? Perhaps they build gigantic structures around black holes to modulate the information output. This could explain anomalies observed around some supermassive black holes, where the energy distribution seems mysteriously too organized to be purely natural. Some astronomers have observed accretion disks with very stable, overly consistent patterns. Could it just be gravity? Sure, but it could also be manipulation. Something or someone modulating the flow of matter and energy to alter what will be transmitted to the daughter universe. This opens up a disturbing possibility. Perhaps universes with technologically advanced civilizations tend to generate more stable, more fertile, or more ordered descendants. Perhaps there is a form of guided cosmological selection, not the work of gods, but of intelligences that arose within the system itself. Civilizations that survive long enough may learn to use black holes to influence future realities. Perhaps this is the ultimate destiny of intelligence, to participate in the architecture of the multiverse. But all this raises an inevitable question. If universes can influence their descendants, then who influenced ours? Is there any visible signature here? Any mark left by civilizations from an ancestral universe? Something subtle, hidden in the mathematics, in the constants, in the primordial structures? Perhaps we will never know, or perhaps we already know without realizing it. The structure of space-time is too elegant to be completely random. It could be coincidence, or it could be legacy. Another profound implication is the possibility that black holes communicate with each other, not in the classical sense, but through space-time resonances. Two black holes connected to similar universes could vibrate in correlated patterns. This would explain why some black holes seem to wake up simultaneously in distant regions of the cosmos, emitting activities that correlate without explanation. Perhaps they are reacting to stimuli coming from the same ancestral or descendant universe. Perhaps this network is more dynamic than we think. What if the entire multiverse is a living organism? Not in the biological sense, but in the structural sense. Universes would be its organs, black holes, its arteries, dark energy, its blood, consciousness, its capacity to perceive itself in infinite layers. Each universe that is born carries fragments of the previous ones. Each universe that dies sends fragments to the next. It's an infinite chain of transformation, like a gigantic migration of information across dimensional oceans. But none of this would be complete without considering the ultimate role of consciousness. Because if black holes transmit patterns, and if complex patterns survive across universes, then it's possible that highly abstract forms of consciousness also somehow traverse them, not as individual beings, but as tendencies, structures, impulses. Perhaps what we call universal intuition, deep mathematics, intrinsic symmetry, is actually an echo of something much older. Perhaps the human impulse to explore, discover, and understand is not merely biological. Perhaps it is a cosmological inheritance, a silent memory of a previous universe. And this leads us to the deepest mystery of all. What happens if we look at a black hole and realize that it is not just a physical object, but a mirror, a reflection of something that exists beyond our cosmos? What if, by studying black holes, we are studying the very mechanism that created our existence? Perhaps we will not only discover what lies beyond the event horizon, perhaps we will discover who we are on the broadest possible scale. And if this discovery is true, then black holes are not just gateways to other universes. They are gateways to the ultimate understanding of reality itself. If black holes are portals to other universes, then they are also philosophical frontiers. They not only challenge physics, but the very concept of identity, continuity, and existence. Because when imagining realities connected through gravitational bridges, we are forced to confront the possibility that the universe is not only larger than we think, it is deeper than we imagine. It is not just a stage where matter and energy dance. It is a multi-layered system where each layer feeds on, influences, and shapes the others. An organism with dimensions that exceed any intuitive logic. In this scenario, the most unsettling question is not, how do black holes work, but why do they exist? Their purpose, if it exists, must be something that transcends what we understand as traditional physics. Perhaps they are natural mechanisms for the renewal of the multiverse, the preservation of information, and the continuity of existence itself. When we observe a black hole, we are seeing the exterior of something closed, something that doesn't reveal what it truly is. Light doesn't escape, information doesn't flow out, at least not in the usual way, and this opacity makes them perfect as boundaries. Each black hole is a sealed surface, a locked portal whose interior can only be imagined through mathematics. But within this inaccessible darkness, there may exist an organization as complex as an entire galaxy, only in a different geometry. This means that our perception is limited not only by what we cannot see, but by what we cannot conceive. The universe, perhaps, isn't trying to hide anything. It's just that we don't yet have the language to interpret what is being shown. What if the internal structure of a black hole is so different from our reality that any attempt to describe it is equivalent to trying to explain the fourth dimension using only three-dimensional metaphors? The singularity may not be a point. It may be a surface, a layer, a network, a volume expanded in dimensions we don't know. Perhaps the internal space is larger than the external universe itself. This wouldn't be absurd. Quantum geometry allows infinite spaces to exist inside finite objects. Just as the surface of a fractal can be limited, but contain infinite complexity, the internal space of a black hole may be an immense domain, capable of harboring entire realities. What if each singularity is essentially an encapsulated multidimensional world, waiting to be released to form a daughter universe? This vision transforms black holes into cosmological seeds, not just connectors, but generators. And if they generate universes, those universes can evolve, generate new black holes, which in turn generate new universes, creating an infinite hereditary line. We are part of a cosmic family tree that stretches back and forth in time, far beyond our ability to trace. Our universe may be a robust branch of this tree, but it is certainly not the trunk. And this leads us to another profound question. Where did this tree begin? Is there a first universe? Or is the tree eternal, without beginning and without end, always recycled by the portals that connect its branches? Perhaps the question about the beginning is as misguided as asking where a circle begins. The multiverse may be a closed, yet infinite cycle, where each universe is both parent and child of another. If this cosmic tree exists, then perhaps there are signs of ancestry imprinted on our universe, patterns that didn't originate here but were transmitted, not visual patterns, but structural ones. For example, the gauge group symmetry that governs particle physics may be a direct inheritance from previous universes. Similarly, the behavior of vacuum energy, the initial geometry of space-time, and even the universe's natural tendency toward accelerated expansion may be traces of inherited structures. We are surrounded by cosmological inheritances without realizing it. It's like trying to understand our own genetic characteristics without knowing our ancestors. We are the product of very ancient processes, perhaps older than the very notion of time in our universe. What if there are sister universes connected to ours through the same ancestral portals? They would be parallel realities, not in the popular sense, but in a genetic one. Universes that share the same parent, or that descend from similar black holes. This means that there would be universes with laws very similar to ours, others with slight variations, and some totally distinct. Perhaps sister universes present small differences, a slightly larger constant, a weaker force, a slightly modified spatial geometry. Perhaps there are even universes where the same evolutionary structures gave rise to similar life, but under different conditions. This possibility brings us face to face with the idea of existential echoes, civilizations that we will never know exist, but that arose due to the same fundamental forces and patterns that allowed our evolution. If black holes are gateways, then sibling universes could be as close as child or parent universes. But proximity here doesn't mean spatial location, it means structural connection. Universes connected by the same black hole network may be constantly exchanging information, perhaps imperceptible, but real. This opens a disturbing path. Universes that share patterns may influence each other through fluctuations in the dimensional network. Perhaps extreme events in one universe, like the collision of two supermassive black holes, cause reverberations in connected universes. These reverberations may be so subtle that we would never consciously perceive them, but they could alter the long-term structure of space-time or influence the formation of new regions. Now imagine something even bolder. What if conscious structures, extremely advanced civilizations, have learned to navigate this network? Not physically, because bodies made of ordinary matter wouldn't survive the crossing, but mentally, informationally. Civilizations could learn to encode their minds into patterns that survive the dimensional transition and cross over to daughter universes. It's not reincarnation, it's not teleportation, it's informational migration. The material support changes, but the pattern remains. Perhaps there are civilizations so ancient that they no longer live in a single universe, but in multiple ones, scattered throughout the cosmic tree. They could communicate through the fundamental language of space-time, gravity, entropy, symmetry. And we, newcomers to this great cycle, may still be unable to recognize the signs. If this is true, where would these signs be? Perhaps in the mathematics we discover, which always seems deeper than necessary. Perhaps in the constants that govern us, which are so finely tuned that they seem to have been calibrated. Perhaps in the quantum properties of the vacuum, which carry enigmatic fluctuations. Or most impressively, perhaps in the patterns that emerge from life itself. Consciousness may be a universal pattern, not just a biological one. It may be something that crosses boundaries and continues to manifest itself in different universes, each time in a different form. Perhaps consciousness is a cosmological tendency, a property that is transmitted through gravitational portals. Life would not be an accident, but an inevitability. What if intelligence is the multiverse's mechanism for self-discovery? If black holes are portals and universes are organisms, consciousness might be the tool the multiverse uses to explore its own layers. Perhaps each civilization that is born plays a role in maintaining the system, not because there is intention, but because the cosmological process itself favors patterns capable of perceiving, understanding, and transforming information. This would make life an emergent property of the transitions between universes, and each civilization would be a fragment of the multiverse, looking at itself through different windows. But there's an even deeper question. What if all of this is not just natural, but necessary? What if the multiverse exists because it needs to exist? This question might seem overly philosophical, but it has physical implications. If black holes generate universes and universes generate black holes, then the cycle must continue. This means that fundamental laws not only describe the cosmos, they guarantee its continuity. The existence of black holes is not accidental, it is essential. They are the valves, the engines, the gates, and the pillars of the multiverse. Without them, the cycle would break down. Nothing would survive. Nothing would continue. The existence of everything depends on them. So what happens if a universe stops producing black holes? It becomes infertile. It ceases to generate offspring. It becomes a cosmological dead end. Perhaps this is the fate of very young or very old universes, or universes with poorly adjusted parameters. But our universe is not like that. It is fertile. It has billions of active black holes, hundreds of billions of stars that will one day collapse into new portals, and enough energy to continue generating structures for trillions of years. We are part of a mother universe that is at the peak of its ability to generate offspring, and this means that we are at the high point of a cosmic cycle that began long before our existence and will continue long after. The question then is not whether black holes are portals. The question is, where are they taking us? And what will emerge from us, from our universe, when we cross the next portal? If black holes are portals to other universes, then any true understanding of this phenomenon requires us to confront the possibility that we are not merely observing distant astronomical objects. We are observing profound mechanisms that can directly shape the destiny of everything that exists, including ourselves. Because, in the end, the most important question is not just what lies on the other side, but what it means to exist in a universe that is itself part of an infinite chain of transformations. If the multiverse is a living organism, and each black hole is a doorway in that organism, then being part of such a cosmos implies that we have never truly been isolated. We are part of a constant flow, a current that traverses epochs, dimensions, and forms of existence. But this leads us to a fascinating paradox. If each black hole generates a daughter universe, and if this generation transmits patterns, then perhaps the universes are not only descendants, but also messages. Messages sent through time and space, written in the language of physics. Perhaps each universe carries an intention, not in the human sense, but in the structural sense, a configuration, a structural purpose inscribed in its laws. And that purpose may simply be to continue the cycle, to ensure that existence never ceases. Because if the multiverse needs black holes to exist, then it also needs universes capable of generating them. This transforms each universe into part of a self-sustaining system, where creation, collapse, and rebirth feed back into each other. What if this cycle is somehow self-adjusting? What if highly unstable universes disappear quickly, while stable and fertile universes thrive for ages, passing on their favorable properties to descendants? This would be a form of cosmological natural selection, a kind of Darwinian evolution between universes. This is not a metaphor. Some physicists have already suggested that universes that produce many black holes are more likely to generate descendants, and therefore their properties become more common in the multiverse. It is almost unsettling to imagine that we live in a universe selected to exist, not for some mystical purpose, but for pure reproductive efficiency. We are part of a successful cosmological lineage, a tree that has produced robust branches, capable of generating new branches. But this idea also suggests that universes may be competing, not consciously, but through physical properties. Universes that expand too rapidly may never generate stars stable enough to form black holes. Universes that are too slow may collapse before producing any structure. Between these extremes, there is a delicate balance, and perhaps our universe is the product of this ideal point. This means that every atom of ours, every star that shines in the sky, every galaxy that slowly rotates is part of a pattern that has proven victorious throughout countless cosmological eras. And, if this is true, then the potential of our universe lies not only in what it is, but in what it can generate. Another intriguing aspect arises when we consider the role of consciousness in this cycle. Because if the multiverse evolves, and if fertile universes generate offspring, then the emergence of consciousness may not be merely an accidental consequence. It may be part of the feedback process. Advanced civilizations that learn to manipulate energy on a stellar scale, that understand black holes, that develop technologies capable of modulating physical properties, can directly influence their universe's ability to generate offspring. This concept posits intelligence not as a biological accident, but as a natural stage in the maturation of a universe. A young universe generates stars. A mature universe generates black holes. A fully developed universe can generate civilizations capable of influencing their descendants. And this means that the ultimate role of consciousness may be to help the universe continue to exist, not because there is a plan, but because the natural process favors structures that reinforce continuity. Advanced civilizations may try to prolong the life of their universe, stabilize unstable regions, control vast amounts of energy, or even manipulate the geometry of space-time. They may try to influence the cosmological heritage by modulating the information that will be transmitted through black holes. It is possible that extremely ancient civilizations have discovered how to imprint specific structures on the event horizon, creating marks that will be reproduced in descendant universes. These marks would not be messages in the traditional sense, but deep codes inscribed in the fundamental constants. If this happened, perhaps we live in a universe that carries fragments of decisions made by intelligences from past eras, civilizations that transcended their own limits and found ways to leave cosmological legacies. It is possible that part of the reason why physics is so mathematically elegant is precisely because it was calibrated by ancestral hands, not biological hands, but civilizations so advanced that they work directly with the structure of space-time. We are heirs to choices made long before we existed, choices inscribed in black holes that gave rise to our reality. But just as we can be heirs, we can also be ancestors. The universe is not just a destination, it is a path. Our actions, as a civilization, can influence what comes next. If we manage to survive long enough, perhaps we can learn to manipulate black holes not only as scientific objects, but as cosmological tools. Perhaps we can influence the next generation of universes. Perhaps our cosmic descendants will never know who we were, but they will still carry fragments of the structures we created. Future physics may be shaped by our present interventions. Our black holes may become seeds of universes we will never see, but which will exist thanks to our understanding. But here, a puzzle arises. If black holes are bridges, will it ever be possible to consciously cross them? Not matter, not a body, but consciousness structured in quantum patterns. Perhaps advanced civilizations have learned to encode their minds in a way that allows them to survive the event horizon. Not as individuals, but as patterns that continue on the other side, integrating into the information flows of the daughter universe. This would be a form of continuity deeper than any notion of individual immortality. An entire civilization could transmit its essence to future universes, not as species, but as informational structures that influence the evolution of everything that comes after. We would be not only biological ancestors, but cosmological ones. If this informational migration is possible, then very ancient civilizations may be scattered throughout the cosmic tree, not in physical bodies, not in galaxies, but within the very fundamental fabric. Perhaps this is why certain patterns appear repeatedly at different scales: fractals, symmetries, constants, natural tendencies of the universe. They are deep memories of civilizations that have become part of physics itself, not individual consciousnesses, but structural echoes. What if the origin of this cycle is something even deeper than we imagine? What if the multiverse not only exists, but needs to exist for something more fundamental to manifest? Because if universes are continuously generated, and if information circulates between them, then perhaps the multiverse is a machine for exploring possibilities. Each universe is an attempt, a variation, an exploration of the space of possible physical laws. Perhaps the multiverse is searching for something. Not consciously, but structurally, like a fractal seeking to fill a space, an organism seeking maximum stability, a structure trying to complete itself. What if we, life, consciousness, curiosity, are part of this search process? What if the need to understand, explore, and question is part of the multiverse's attempt to fully perceive itself? Perhaps black holes are gateways not only to new universes, but to the very ultimate understanding of reality. Whoever learns to manipulate black holes learns to manipulate the cycle of existence, learns to influence the destiny of everything, learns perhaps to become part of the deep architecture of reality. Ultimately, the most profound question that remains is not what exists beyond the event horizon, nor how universes are born, nor how they die. The most profound question is, why does a cycle exist? Why does a tree exist? Why does such a vast and interconnected organism exist? And perhaps the answer is as simple as it is inevitable. Because existence must continue, because reality is movement, and because the multiverse has found in black holes the perfect way to ensure that existence never ceases. Thus, if black holes are bridges, then looking at them is looking at the very engine of reality. And in a way, every time we observe a black hole, we are looking not at the end, but at the beginning of everything, including ourselves. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. Send it to someone who you think would enjoy this topic too. And of course, subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next videos. See you next time.